When the millionaire screamed at his secretary, she responded with something that shocked everyone. The air crackled with tension as the clock struck noon in the towering glass building, reflecting sunlight in a dazzling dance that belied the storm brewing inside. Inside the plush office, Harold Finch, a tycoon known for his ruthless business deals, stood roaring at his secretary, Ellen Bright. His face was a toxic shade of crimson, muscles bulging, jaw grinding as he paced like a caged tiger. "You think you can just mess up my schedule?" he bellowed, voice thick enough to cut. The veins in his neck pulsed angrily, each throb echoing like a drum of impending disaster, but, before he could unleash another tirade, Ellen's composure stunned everyone in the room. She took a deep breath, the kind that hinted at both defiance and despair, like an athlete about to leap. "You don't own me, Harold. I've had enough of your tantrums." Her words hung in the air, sharp and unexpected, freezing the frantic office atmosphere. The other employees gasped, their whispers curling like smoke around the room. Could she really defy the master of the boardroom? The room felt smaller as the silence stretched, pregnant with unease. Was this a revolt? A coward's last stand? Outside, the city buzzed, completely unaware of the earthquake that trembled just behind these polished walls. Ellen's heart raced, the pounding drumming in her ears. She had never spoken to him this way, but the sense of empowerment coursed through her veins, igniting something she never knew was there. Suddenly, a piercing scream erupted from the hallway. It sent a jolt through everyone, like a lightning strike on a quiet afternoon. What the hell was that? Harold's fury shifted to fear. The team crowded toward the door, eyes darting, brows furrowed in confusion. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." A shiver ran down Ellen's spine. The scream echoed again, suffocating the air with something dark and elusive. "We should check it out," someone murmured uncertainly, eyes wide, searching for gut-checking signals of safety within the swirling uncertainty. Ellen exchanged a wary glance with Harold, her heart pounding now for different reasons. Whatever had caused that scream was suddenly far more pressing than their spat. Curiosity mixed with dread rising in her throat. What was happening out there? Why was the usually bustling office plunged into such a grotesque hush? The door trembled ever so slightly under a looming, unseen pressure, and as Harold stepped cautiously toward it, Ellen moved right beside him, her pulse thumping loudly together but still so separate, both changed forever in that fragile moment. What lurked beyond the door was a mystery that needed unraveling, and they could only hope they weren't stepping into something monstrous. Ellen felt the chill as Harold grasped the doorknob, the metal cool against his palm. He glanced back at her, uncertainty etching lines in his usually confident demeanor. She nodded, urging him forward, though deep down, a voice screamed for her to flee. The scream rang in her ears, reverberating like a haunting echo. What if it was worse than they feared? With a quick turn, Harold flung the door open, and a surge of chaos spilled into the office. A figure in the hallway stood frozen, eyes wide with terror. It was Carl, the IT guy, his usually calm demeanor shattered, face as pale as a ghost. Blood dripped from his hands, pooling on the floor, a vivid contrast against the pale tiles. What happened? Harold's voice trembled now, the booming authority replaced by a hint of desperation. It's Rebecca." Carl gasped, eyes darting to the far end of the hallway. She's hurt. We need help." Ellen's stomach twisted. Rebecca was the office's beloved intern, the girl with the bright smile that lit up even the dullest Mondays. A whirlwind of dread and confusion wrapped around her like a vice. Without thinking, she pushed past Harold and Carl, running down the hallway toward the sound of muffled gasps and shuffling feet. As she raced forward, her heart hammered in her chest, each beat echoing the urgency of the situation. That scream echoed again in her mind, and she prayed it wasn't linked to the chaos unfolding ahead. Rounding the corner, her breath hitched in her throat there, surrounded by a small crowd, lay Rebecca on the floor, crumpled and lifeless. Ellen knelt beside her, desperation clawing at her throat. Blood blossomed from a deep gash in Rebecca's neck like a terrible flower. Panic engulfed the people nearby, their faces blanched with shock and horror, whispers spiraling around like clouds of smoke. "Someone call 911. Screamed a voice from the back, but no one moved. It was as if everyone was frozen in time, trapped in the nightmare unfolding before them. "Call them!" Ellen screamed, her voice cracking. "Get help!" Carl was still standing behind her, his hands trembling as he fumbled for his phone, but his expression revealed a truth far worse than she could fathom. Ellen's vision blurred, tears mixing with the creeping dread that began to coil tightly around her. "Ellen! What do we do?" Harold's voice suddenly cut through the chaos like a knife. He had followed her, but the fury that once dominated his expression melted into fear. For the first time, he looked vulnerable, just a man who had lost control. The crowd thickened as more employees spilled into the hallway, confusion mutating to horror as another scream broke through, this one from the break room. It was filled with frantic cries, dissonance rippling and distorting the already tense atmosphere. Tension gripped Ellen's chest as she wrestled with mounting panic. Now what? She thought, dread pooling in the pit of her stomach. The hallway began to suffocate her, and she felt the weight of the team watching, each set of eyes scrutinizing her, looking for guidance. But as she steeled herself to act, a figure emerged from the corner of her eye, a shadow lurking just outside the bright outline of the entrance. It moved like a specter against the harsh light, and her blood ran cold. Someone was watching, waiting. What was happening? Were they safe? The chaos around her held too many questions, and time stretched like a thin piece of thread ready to snap. And then, without warning, another deep rumble of a scream threaded through the air, chilling, terrified, louder and far closer than before. Ellen's heart raced even faster. Whatever was outside, whatever had started this nightmare, it was far from over. Ellen's breath quickened as the scream echoed once more through the office, a sound so raw and filled with terror that it sent a ripple of panic through the crowd. Each employee looked at one another, the collective disbelief mirroring her own fear. She turned to Harold, whose face had gone ashen, eyes wide and frantic. The weight of leadership was crushing him, just like it threatened to crush her. "Stay here, I'm going to see what's happening," she said, desperately trying to find strength in her voice. As she sprinted toward the break room, the screams became more frantic, an urgent plea that compelled her every step. Had it escalated? What if more were hurt? As she neared the break room, Ellen pushed through the door, the scene inside hitting her like a physical blow. The lights flickered wildly, illuminating the chaos. Chairs were overturned, and a couple of staff members huddled together, clutching each other tightly. In the center stood Rebecca's desk, once a space filled with motivation and laughter, now splattered with fresh red stains that contrasted starkly against the pale beige surroundings. The sight was enough to paralyze her, yet she forced her legs to move, threading her way through the horror-struck crowd. And then she saw him, Joe, the Millionaire CEO, usually so polished and composed, now stood trembling against the wall. His tailored suit was smeared with dark droplets that seemed to form a grotesque pattern on the fabric. "Joe! What happened?" Ellen shouted over the chaos. His deep breath shook as he finally turned to meet her eyes, but the look in his face sent chills down her spine. It was Rebecca. "I don't know how it happened." His voice broke, and in that moment, she saw not the iconic leader but a man caught in a storm he couldn't control, lost amid the confusion. Suddenly, a shattering crash echoed behind them, pulling Ellen's attention away. A nearby window had shattered, glass raining down like confetti in a sick celebration. The room went quiet, breaths held as they all gazed, wide-eyed, at what lay outside. In the street below, confusion reigned. A group of people had gathered, pointing at something hidden from their view. Ellen seized that moment of silence, her panic igniting a sense of urgency. We need to get everyone out of here. Now. She turned to the group. Everyone needs to leave. The building is not safe. But the more she shouted, the less coherent her voice became, as if her words were lost in the throbbing chaos that enveloped them. The employees started moving toward the exit, their fearful eyes darting between her and the broken window, fear creeping through the air like smoke. However, as they stumbled out, a woman fell, crying out for help. Ellen hesitated, instinct battling with the impulsive goal of escape. A quick glance at Harold, managing to rally a couple of people to assist the fallen woman, gave her the push she needed. Grab her. We can't leave anyone behind. She reached down to help, catching the woman's terrified gaze. Just as they lifted the woman, the sound of loud footsteps thundering down the hallway broke through the tension. It was Carl, coming back toward them, looking more frantic than before, his phone in his shaking hand. They're coming. We need to hide. Underneath the chaos, a new wave of apprehension washed over Ellen. Whoever or whatever was out there was closing in fast. Who's coming? She asked, her heart pounding as she glanced around the group. But Carl couldn't answer. Instead, his eyes widened even more, staring behind her. Ellen turned slowly, dread pooling in her stomach as she prepared for whatever horror awaited. The door creaked open slowly, shadows dancing like specters in the doorway. The air hung thick with tension as she braced herself for the worst. With bated breath, all eyes were fixed on the looming figure in the entryway. What or who would enter next? A tall silhouette emerged from the shadows, an imposing figure clad in a long trench coat, their face obscured by a wide-brimmed hat. Time seemed to slow as the tension coiled tighter within the room, sending a chill through every onlooker. Ellen felt her heart race as dread curled deeper in her chest. Who was this stranger, and why did they seem so unnaturally calm amid the chaos? Back away. The figure commanded, voice low and gravelly, resonating through the stunned silence like an ominous echo. Fear rippled through the crowd, and instinct kicked in. Without thinking, Ellen stepped forward. What do you want? She managed to call out, her voice cutting through the stillness, shaky but firm. The figure paused, tilting their head slightly, as if considering her. Your lives depend on your compliance, they replied, each word dripping with menace. You've opened a door that should have remained closed. Ellen's pulse thundered in her ears. There was something familiar about that voice, something unsettling. Before she could place it, Joe's strangled cry broke from the back of the room. No. Please. His eyes darted between Ellen and the figure, desperation clawing at his usually composed demeanor. You can't. Watch your tongue, Joe, the figure taunted, stepping closer, revealing a sharp jawline and piercing eyes that glinted dangerously in the flickering light. You're not in charge anymore. A collective gasp swept through the crowd. The fear was palpable as disbelief sank in. If this person held power over their CEO, what were the chances they could control the very room they stood in? Ellen, we need to get out of here. Carl shouted, his voice trembling, echoing the urgent thoughts racing through Ellen's mind. She turned to him, her instincts at war. Should they flee? She could feel the weight of the decision threatening to crush her. No. Joe stepped forward, shaking visibly. You don't understand. They'll kill you. They don't care. Silence. The figure roared, and the air seemed to thicken with an unseen force. It rendered Joe mute. Ellen fought to hold her ground, but the oppressive energy was enough to make her want to run. What do you want from us? She cried, stepping further into the line of fire, desperation flaring within her. Information, the figure replied, that cold smile creeping into view beneath the brim of their hat. And you're going to help me, whether you want to or not. A wave of murmur gripped the crowd, and Ellen could feel the fear pressing against her skin. There was no hope left, only a suffocating sense of impending doom. Her mind raced with possibilities. What could they know? What secrets threatened to spill out? Please. A voice whimpered from behind her, the woman they had helped earlier, still trembling. "We just want to leave. We don't want any trouble." Suddenly, the lights flickered violently, plunging the room into darkness. A surge of panic sent the group into chaos as screams erupted once more. Ellen felt herself grabbed by the arm, spun around, and caught sight of the figure lunging toward her. Everything seemed to slow down, fear coiling tighter around her throat. In the darkness, the room echoed with sounds of desperate scrambling, cries swallowed up by sheer panic. As her body reacted before her brain could catch up, Ellen realized, what if this was the moment they would all learn the truth? Then, a piercing scream sliced through the blackness, and suddenly, everything went still. Who would fall victim next? What revelation awaited them in the shadows? The darkness enveloped Ellen like a heavy cloak, stifling her breath and muddling her thoughts. She struggled to make sense of the chaos. The screams and shuffles morphed into a haunting symphony of terror around her. Heart racing, she felt the heat of panic pooling in her stomach. Out of the silence, a single voice broke through, low and deliberate. "You think you can hide from me?" The figure's voice cut through the air with a glacial edge. Ellen's body froze in place, every fiber urging her to flee, but curiosity mixed with fear rooted her to the ground. Suddenly, the lights flickered back to life, illuminating the room to reveal a scene more horrific than she anticipated. A man lay sprawled on the floor, clutching his side as blood began to seep through his fingers. The figure stood over him, that menacing smile still plastered on their face. "Ellen!" Carl's frantic voice pulled her back to the present. He was near the exit, eyes wide with terror, hands trembling as if he might leap into action at any moment. "Help him!" But Ellen couldn't move. Her gaze flitted between the wounded man and the looming figure. It was Joe, lying on the floor, gasping for breath. The reality of what was happening, this was all so surreal. "Joe," she gasped, a hollow ache forming in her chest. "Help me please," his voice was strained, punctuated with desperate breaths. "Enough." The figure snapped, turning slightly to face the crowd now shrouded in confusion. "None of you understand the stakes. This is your last chance to cooperate." The urgency in their voice snapped something in Ellen. No longer frozen, she stepped forward again. "What do you want from us?" The question burned in her throat, desperate and raw. A glimmer of amusement crossed the figure's face. "You have no idea what you've stumbled into, do you? Secrets buried deep, threats lurking, one false move and you'll all be swallowed whole." She felt teeth grinding dread, but another thought stirred within. "What do you mean?" Before the figure could respond, another scream erupted, this time from the crowd. Ellen turned, catching sight of the trembling woman from earlier. "Get away from him!" she shouted, her voice breaking as sheer terror overtook her. "Stop!" Ellen's voice rang out louder than intended, the weight of the room's fear descended upon her like an avalanche. "Let him go. He didn't do anything. Isn't that the problem?" The figure shot back, stepping closer to Joe, a predatory gleam in their eyes. "He does not know how to keep his mouth shut. Secrets, they're dangerous things, especially when you spill them." Ellen's heart raced, her mind a whirlwind. What was Joe hiding? What kind of secrets could bring this figure, the very embodiment of terror, into their lives? "Please, I can give you what you want. Just don't hurt him." Joe gasped, blood spilling across the floor, a disturbing red pool forming that mirrored the fears taking root in Ellen's soul. The figure paused, breathing slowly, considering. "Very well. I'll make you a deal," they said, leaning down so only Joe could hear. "You give me what I want, or the blood on your hands will be your own." Every nerve in Ellen's body screamed for escape, but she forced herself to stay. Then the desperate plea out of Joe's mouth struck her like a lightning bolt in the dark. "Ellen! They know about the files." The revelation hung heavy in the air, a turning point in this dreadful game. A flash of recognition hit Ellen, and a chilling realization washed over her. They weren't just after information, they were after something far more dangerous, that twisted smile returned to the figure's face. "Now we're getting somewhere," they said, stepping back deliberately. "Let the games begin." As Ellen grappled with the implications, dread twisted within her. What had Joe gotten them all mixed up in? Her hands shook, a storm of emotions flooding through her. There were secrets to uncover, truths to confront, and now lives depended on their next moves. As panic surged anew, the figure's voice broke the tense standoff. "Choose wisely, or it could cost you everything." The stakes were rising, and now Ellen was caught in a web that threatened to pull her under. What lie on the other side of truth could consume them all? An icy silence filled the room, as if the air itself had thickened with tension. The figure shifted their gaze from Joe to Ellen, their eyes gleaming like shards of glass. "You know," they began, voice dripping with menace, "once you've tasted the truth, you can never go back. Are you ready for that?" Ellen's throat tightened. "What truth?" she asked, each word feeling heavy with the weight of unspoken fears. Joe groaned, trying to lift himself off the ground, but pain twisted his features. "Ellen, don't," he gasped, blood pooling around him, creating a vivid contrast against the stark white floor. "Shut him up." The figure barked, frustration clear in their tone. The crowd behind Ellen flinched, murmurs erupting like tiny explosions. Carl remained by the exit but didn't he budge. Sweat dripped from his brow, and Ellen could see the fight within him as he struggled to decide whether to help or flee. "Let's make this interesting," the figure declared, a sly smile curving their lips. "I'll give you a deadline. 1 hour. Deliver the files to me, and you can leave here alive." Ellen felt a chill. "What if we don't?" "Then, my dear," the figure said, their voice a low hiss, "I will turn this place into a scene of nightmares." They gestured theatrically, like a conductor leading an orchestra into a deafening crescendo. A cacophony of panic rose around her as more faces turned pale. Ellen could feel their fear radiating through the air, thick and suffocating. "What files? What do you want with them?" The question burst forth before she could second-guess herself. "I think you know," the figure replied, narrowing their eyes. "But if you truly want to play this game, you need to win it. All of you. And Joe," they leaned closer, "you need to decide how much you're willing to sacrifice for the truth." The blood drained from Joe's face, and for a moment, Ellen saw understanding flicker in his eyes. I can't do it," he whispered, desperation cracking his voice. "Come on, Joe." Ellen urged, stepping closer, adrenaline pumping. "You know we can figure this out together. Just tell us what it is they want." The figure chuckled softly, a sound that sent shivers down her spine. "Ah, but you see, it's not just about what I want. It's about what you're willing to give up. Trust. Integrity. Perhaps even a little of that precious friendship you all seem to cling to." The onlookers shifted uncomfortably, whispering against the backdrop of rising anxiety. Ellen gritted her teeth, glancing back at Carl, who shook his head slowly, as if to say they were running out of time. "I won't let you hurt him," she shouted, her voice steadier than she felt. "You want the truth. Let us negotiate." The figure raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Oh. You think you can bargain with me? How deliciously naive. But I'll play along. What do you propose?" Ellen's mind raced. She could feel the eyes of the crowd on her, waiting, hoping. "You get what you want, and we all walk out of here. No one else has to get hurt. Just let Joe go." The figure mused, stepping back. "Bold. And foolish. But then again, what do I know of folly?" The atmosphere grew charged with uncertainty, electrifying the air. Joe's breathing quickened, panic setting in as he tried to rise but collapsed again. Don't do this, Ellen. They won't keep their word." "But what if they do?" Ellen countered, her frustration bubbling to the surface. "Isn't it worth the risk to save you?" Suddenly, the figure clapped their hands together, breaking the tension. Very well. I accept your terms, but know this, in a game of secrets, someone always loses. And as the echo faded, a shudder ran through the room. The countdown had begun. Time was slipping through Ellen's fingers, and every second felt like a new stroke of fear. In that moment, with Joe's life hanging in the balance, Ellen realized they weren't just fighting for their freedom. They were on the brink of uncovering the most dangerous truths of all, ones that could unravel everything they thought they knew, but just before she could gather her thoughts to act, the lights flickered violently, plunging them back into darkness. The last thing she heard was the figure's unsettling laughter, echoing through the now oppressive silence. What would happen next? 1 hour was all they had left to figure it out, and the clock was ticking. The darkness enveloped the room like a heavy blanket, muffling the gasps of the horrified crowd. Ellen's heart raced, pounding louder than the whispers swirling around her. She strained to see through the gloom, her pulse thrumming in her ears. "Joe!" she shouted, her voice breaking the silence like a glass shattering. She lunged forward, desperate to feel him near. "Joe, can you hear me?" A faint groan emerged from the darkness, followed by the sound of scraping against the floor. "Ellen, I'm here." His voice was weak, shaking. "Stay with me." She stumbled toward him, her fingers brushing against his shoulder, the warmth of his skin contrasting with the chill in the air. The panic was palpable, spreading like wildfire as she felt about, looking for any sign of the menacing figure. Suddenly, the lights flickered back on, casting a stark glare on the tense scene. Not much had changed. Joe was still sprawled on the ground, bloodied and weak, and the figure remained ominous, lurking somewhere in the corner of her vision like a storm cloud, their expression masked by shadows. "Time is ticking," they said, their voice oozing with malicious glee. "What will you do?" "The truth waits for no one." Ellen felt her gut twist. "I can't believe you'd make him suffer for your games. You're a monster." She spat, forcing her voice to remain steady. The figure leaned in slightly, their eyes glinting dangerously. "And yet, you're the one asking for mercy in this wretched game. Tell me, what would you sacrifice? Who would you betray to save your friend?" The crowd leaned in, collective breaths held tight. The weight of her situation crashed down on her, its magnitude suffocating. Was there someone she could betray? The thought gnawed at her insides. Her eyes darted to Carl, who stood rigid by the exit, locked in a fight-or-flight instinct that mirrored her own turmoil. Ellen shook her head, refusing to give in. "I won't betray anyone." "You want the files? Then show me what you really want." The figure grinned, revealing a hint of something sharp beneath their lips, almost predatory. "Oh, but sweet Ellen, you underestimate my capabilities. There's more at stake here than your little friendship." "Then what?" she pressed, tightening her grip around Joe. "What else do you want?" They straightened up, unfolding their body with an unsettling grace. "The information contained in those files holds secrets about people far more powerful than you. Secrets that could topple governments, ruin careers, and shatter lives. But you're too naive to understand the true essence of it all." Ellen's intuition screamed at her. "You're lying," she shot back, hope fueling her words. "You want them because you're afraid of losing control. You don't have the power you think you do." With a flick of their wrist, the figure snapped their fingers, triggering another surge of fear as the lights flashed again, this time casting grotesque shadows on the walls. "Keep talking, Ellen," they taunted. "Let us see how brave you are when your friend's life is at stake." Panic surged through her veins, and she turned back to Joe, desperately searching for strength in his fading eyes. "Hold on, Joe. We'll figure this out. I promise." "Ellen," he rasped, straining with every word. "Just get out. Please don't know. I'm not leaving you," she exclaimed, shaking her head fiercely. The crowd's tension crescendoed around her, each person's fear feeding an oppressive weight pressing down on her chest. Just then, a loud crash echoed from the far end of the room, startling everyone. The figure snapped their head in that direction, their momentary distraction presenting a flicker of hope. What was that? The figure growled, turning swiftly. Ellen, it's our chance. Carl yelled from the exit, his face lighting with defiance. Ellen's heart raced. I can't leave Joe. Grab him. We can fight together. The clock was still ticking. She had seconds. But the choice twisted inside her like a dagger: stay and risk losing everything with Joe, or seize this opportunity to escape and possibly save them both. Tension crackled like electricity as choices screamed to be made. The figure turned back, rage flashing in their eyes. You think you can walk away? You have no idea what you're getting into. With one last look at Joe, Ellen swallowed her fear. In that moment, something deep inside her ignited a spark of rebellion that might just change everything. What would she choose? Who would she trust with their future, and who would pay the price? Ellen's heart raced as adrenaline fueled her decision. The room felt like it was closing in, walls trembling with the weight of desperation. She reached for Joe's arm and gripped it firmly, hoping to pull him up. I'll carry you if I have to. But Joe flinched, panic flickering across his face. No, it's too dangerous. You don't understand. You can't trust them. The figure took a step closer, a shadow that shifted, exuding darkness. Oh, but it's too late for trust, dear Ellen. The clock has nearly struck. Carl's voice broke through the tension. Ellen, we can't wait. We need to go now. Time pressed down on her, each second a reminder of Joe's vulnerability. She had to make a choice. The figure leaned in, eyes narrowing. What do you truly value? This pathetic friend, or your own life? A wave of rage surged through her. Joe is not pathetic. You're the one hiding behind shadows, afraid of the light. She shouted, her voice echoing through the room. The crowd stirred, a mix of fear and renewed strength blossoming. With one swift motion, she turned back to Joe, her heart pounding against her ribs. Can you walk? Can you stand? I can try, Joe murmured, determination cracking through his pain. He slowly pushed himself up, his hand brushing against the floor, grounding him amidst chaos. Ellen. Carl urged, glancing back at the figure, who was now seething with rage. We need to move. Just a moment. She hissed, her eyes locked on Joe. She grabbed his arm, lifting him with the strength of desperation. He leaned against her, breathing labored but resolute. The figure's patience wore thin. If you think you can escape, you are sorely mistaken. Their voice rang out, commanding, as the lights flickered more erratically. Shadows danced like creatures of the night, ready to pounce. Ellen took a step forward, using her body to shield Joe. We're not afraid of you. You don't control us. But the figure only laughed, a chilling sound that twisted the air. Ah, brave fool. This game has just begun. Carl's eyes darted to the exit. Now, Ellen. Before they regroup. She felt a surge, a need to act beyond the fear. As she and Joe moved toward the exit, the figure yelled, You think you can waltz out? Let me show you the consequences of your choice. Suddenly, the crowd erupted in chaos. People shoved each other, desperate to flee the escalating terror. Ellen pushed forward, dragging Joe along, the noise turning deafening as panic spread like wildfire. Hold on. She cried, panic threading through her voice as they reached the exit door. A deafening blast punctuated the air. The figure had struck something, a warning shot echoing through the chamber. Ellen froze, heart pounding violently. Ellen, run! Joe shouted, his voice filled with urgency. With one last look at the figure, their eyes glinting with malice, Ellen turned and sprinted towards the exit, pulling Joe behind her as the world blurred. They burst into the night air, the cool breeze a shocking contrast to the suffocating dread they left behind. But freedom was just within reach. Where's Carl? She gasped, scanning the shadows. Suddenly, behind them, the figure emerged, clearly unscathed, a dark reflection against the moonlight. You may have escaped this night, but know this. I will find you again. Ellen's breath hitched as terror gripped her. This wasn't over. The stakes had just risen, and a new layer of uncertainty curled around her resolve. Ellen, let us move. Joe pulled her back as Carl lunged forward, his face a mix of determination and fear. With no time to spare, they raced into the darkness, uncertainty swirling around them like a thick fog. What did the figure truly want? And how far were they willing to go to get it? The chase was only beginning. Ellen ran, her heart pounding in rhythm with the shuffle of their footsteps. The cool night air stung her lungs, but the urgency to escape pushed her forward, propelling her deeper into the shadows of the alley. Joe leaned heavily against her, gritting his teeth against the pain. They needed to put distance between themselves and that malevolent figure still lurking in the night. Where's Carl? She gasped, panic rising in her throat like bile. Behind us. Joe wheezed, barely able to keep pace. He'll catch up. But there was no sign of Carl, only the echo of their hurried breaths and the distant shouts from the frenzied crowd. Ellen stole a glance over her shoulder and nearly froze. A figure moved, dark and menacing, shifting effortlessly through the gloom. Her chest tightened, every instinct screaming at her to keep running. Faster. She urged Joe, and he pushed himself harder, their feet slapping on the uneven pavement. Suddenly, the streetlights flickered, plunging them into sudden darkness before the lights blazed back to life. Ellen stumbled, the sudden loss of light disorienting her. She felt Joe's hand slip away as he fell against the brick wall. Joe. She turned back, dread bubbling in her chest. I'll be fine, just go. His voice was strained, but the determination quaked beneath it. No way am I leaving you. She steadied him by the shoulders, looking deep into his eyes. We'll make it together. The shadows stirred behind them, and Ellen's gaze snapped upwards. The figure was there, closer now, eyes gleaming maliciously in the light. Rage burned in Ellen's veins. You think you can scare us? You win. The figure laughed again, and the sound echoed like thunder, rattling in the stillness of the night. Childish bravery save you. Then, another voice split the air, a sharp shout. Get down. Carl burst from the shadows, barreling into the figure with a force that knocked both of them down. Ellen gasped, her heart soaring for a fleeting moment. Run! He yelled, grappling with the figure, who writhed beneath him like a serpent. Carl! Ellen cried, but she hesitated, torn between staying with Joe and helping her friend. I'll hold them. Carl grunted through clenched teeth. You just get him out of here. Ellen made her choice. She grabbed Joe's arm and pulled him along, forcing him to move even as every instinct screamed to look back for Carl. They rounded a corner into another alley, the walls closing in around them like a funnel of dread. Where do we go now? Joe asked, gasping for breath. Anywhere but here. She snapped, her voice straining. Just keep moving. Ahead, a flicker of light danced from an open doorway. A bar open late, inviting safety in its warmth. There. We can hide in there. As they approached, the sound of footsteps echoed behind them, blending with the urgent patter of their own heartbeats. Ellen hesitated for a heartbeat at the threshold, her instincts rewriting a familiar mantra, nothing is ever safe. Come on. Joe urged, pushing on the door. It swung open, creaking like a warning bell. They stumbled inside, breathless. The bar was dimly lit, the atmosphere heavy with laughter and clinking glasses, completely contrasting the confrontation they had just narrowly escaped. Ellen exhaled, relief washing over her like a tide. But in the back of her mind, the lingering fear of that figure gnawed at her. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from outside, a battle cry that sent chills racing down her spine. They're coming! She shouted, her voice barely making it above the din of the crowd. As people began to notice them, their laughter fading, the tension in the air grew thick. Who was that figure? What did they want from them? And why were things only getting worse? Just as she turned, ready to face the crowd and figure out their next move, the lights flickered again, this time plunging the room into darkness. What horrifying surprise awaited them in the shadows? The darkness swallowed the bar like a beast, cutting off the glimmering laughter and clinking glasses, replacing them with a frosty grip of fear. Ellen's heart raced, each thudding beat echoing in her ears. She couldn't stay still. Panic surged through her, climbing up her throat. "Joe, we've got to move," she whispered urgently, eyes darting around in search of an escape. "Where?" he gasped, leaning against the bar counter for support, face pale and drenched in sweat. What if before he could finish, the lights flickered back on, casting a dim glow that illuminated the faces of confused patrons. And there, at the entrance, stood the figure. The shadows seemed to eat them alive, their malevolent smile stretching across their face, a predator among the prey. "No, no." Ellen's breath hitched as she instinctively pulled Joe closer, pressing him behind her as a shield. Every ounce of her training screamed to flee, but there was nowhere to hide, nowhere to escape the nightmare unfolding before them. The patrons started to murmur, their relaxed expressions twisting into fear. "What's happening? Is that?" "Shut up!" the figure snapped, voice dripping with menace, cutting through the noise like a knife. "This isn't your fight. Step aside or just leave us alone," Ellen shouted, her voice drowning in the rising tide of desperation. "What do you want?" The figure's laughter echoed in the room, void of warmth, sending chills rattling down her spine. "I want what's mine. The files. And you're going to hand them over like good little sheep." A flicker of recognition crossed Ellen's mind. The files were not just pieces of paper. Someone's life, someone's secret lay buried within them, a truth too potent to unleash. You think you can control us with threats?" she asked, surprising herself with the steadiness of her voice. "Control? No, sweetheart. It's about understanding the game we're playing," the figure retorted, stepping into the light. It was a face she'd seen before, one of the executives, Adam West, a serpent in a tailored suit. "You've stepped into a world you can't comprehend. The secrets I'm after are bigger than you could imagine." A wave of anger flooded through her. How dare he think he could ruin lives for his own gain? "We won't play your game," she declared, stepping forward, heart racing with defiance. "I'd rather fight back than do your dirty work." Joe, gaining strength, emerged from behind her. "We will expose you, reveal your truths to everyone," he shouted. "You think you have power? We have nothing to lose." The collective tension crashed against the walls, each patron frozen in a silence that crackled with fear. "Oh, but you do have something to lose," Adam's gaze flicked over to the crowd, an unsettling grin creeping onto his lips. "Your lives, your friend's life." His voice trailed off, taking the tension to a breaking point. Ellen felt her resolve shake, panic clawing at her insides. "What are you going to do? Is this how you want to play?" "Let's call it a bargaining chip," he said smoothly, raising his hands. 1 hour. You give me the information I seek, and no one else gets hurt. Start digging." Ellen locked eyes with Joe, uncertainty flickering between them. They had been through so much. Could they really give in now? The thought of surrendering that powerful truth felt like poison in her veins. "I won't let you take him, or any of us for that matter," she said fiercely, her defiance only growing more powerful. Suddenly, amidst the paralyzing fear, a loud crash reverberated from the back exit, shattering the tension. A booming voice echoed through the bar. "Police! Everyone, stay where you are." The figure froze, eyes wide in realization. What? Panic surged through him, and he spun on his heels, making a hasty retreat into the shadows. "Get down!" Ellen shouted, instincts kicking in. She pulled Joe closer, shielding him as chaos erupted, bar patrons scrambling as officers rushed inside. "Stay where you are. An officer bellowed, but the sudden unraveling of control left Ellen breathless. "We're here for an emergency call." "Where is the threat?" "I'm the threat." Adam shouted back defiantly, but before he could react further, the officers advanced, pinning him against the wall. "Back away!" another officer commanded, forcing the room to shatter into wild chatter. Ellen watched as Adam struggled against the officers, realizing the pressure he had held over them was slipping away. "Ellen, we need to go now," Joe urged, his breath still labored as he regained his footing. "They'll be here any moment." The lights flickered again but remained steady this time. The dread that had hung over them had begun to lift, just slightly. Ellen seized the moment, urgently reaching for Joe, and they made their way towards the exit. Suddenly, voices mixed in the air around her, a cacophony that felt familiar but terrifying. Yet there was a new wave of energy, a strength that flicked at the corners of her determination. As they burst through the door into the cool night air, Ellen paused for a moment. Joe leaned heavily against her, she could feel his heartbeat anchoring both of them. "Are we free?" he gasped, struggling not to fall into overwhelming relief. "For now," Ellen replied, her heart still racing. "But this isn't over. We'll have to fight back." The urgency of the night surrounded them, the distant sirens wailing like a chorus of hope. The fear that had once consumed them now ignited a fire within her. They had faced darkness and survived, and together, they would rise again. "Together?" Joe whispered, offering a weak smile. "Always," Ellen said firmly, her heart swelling. "Let us get out of here. But next time, we fight with the truth." With resolute steps, they fled into the night, ready to confront whatever lay ahead and prepared to expose the secrets that could reshape their precarious world. They were no longer subjects to fear, now, they were warriors of truth. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support, so smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this epic ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support makes all the difference.